Hello everyone, PastorDruski here with a glimpse into the upcoming Mechabellum 0.8 patch that's coming up on Thursday, April the 4th. And the devs have been kind enough to pull back the curtain ever so slightly to let content creators such as myself get to peek inside and then tell you our impressions of what we have found. And let me tell you, I am rather excited. Now, unfortunately, the specific changes of balance, of buffs and nerfs, that sort of thing, unit abilities even, a lot of these things, they've actually changed multiple times over the course of our testing period. I honestly do not know what the final patch notes will entail, unfortunately. Because of that process, we've actually had several times where content was being recorded, both myself, other creators as well, content was being recorded and it's no longer usable, it's obsolete, things have changed. That's the bad news. The good news is that things have changed. Part of that was feedback given by content creators. I gotta give Amarok some credit here. He's did a lot of work making quality of life improvements and feedback that we are all feeling to the devs, and those are things are actively being changed. Some of those are included in this patch, some of them will be in the next patch, but these are things that it's been neat to see the design process and have some small part in that. And so that's been kind of exciting. But as far as the actual changes here, already, I know you can tell there is a different UI. Let's just have a quick look. You can kind of see it is blue. There's a lot of blue things on the screen right now. Everything is still pretty much where you left it, though. It's not a big deal, but you do have a different layout in the store. Don't worry, it's not going to be something where you get lost and can't find your way home, but it is blue. And so that's the main change that I found here in the UI overhaul outside of a match. However, there is some big news, and that was back here in the multiplayer section. That is the 2v2 MMR leaderboard is going live in just a couple of days. This means you can play with your friends. This means that you don't have to worry about when you play with that random person that it's going to ruin all that hard work you've done in the solo ladder. This is wonderful news. It allows you to bring in that new buddy who's never played it before, introduce them to the game, play some matches, that sort of thing, and not fear for maybe your primary leaderboard on the 1v1. That is great news. I'm very excited about that. And then we have some other changes in the actual game. Now, in a match, you can immediately see the change in the UI, particularly in the artwork for the specialists. You can see the art is kind of front and center here, and it looks pretty good. A lot of effort put in there. Unfortunately, because of it, we have less screen space for the actual information, and you can see how the text for quick supply here, supply specialist, rhino specialist, they're all overlapping the card behind it with that transparency. It's kind of making things difficult to read. The text size is probably a little bit needing work on as well, but overall it's just an interesting change that they've moved with. Let's just grab something here so we can see the rest of it. And now you can see there's blue. There's blue everywhere. You've got blue in all the corners. All of the UI is now a blue theme. We've got even the emote boxes here, or the icon there is different. Definitely have a big change there. I don't particularly mind, though I do tend to just want us to pick something and stay with it. So if this is going to be where it's at, I'm fine with that. I just don't want it to constantly be changing. It was particularly jarring as we had our beta access as well as the live server for our regular stream, going back and forth between that and just not being able to find things. Now you might notice, because this is still in here as of right before the deployment of the patch, but they are aware, there are a few just interface bugs, and that would be kind of dead zones, ghost areas, if you will, where, for example, above the unit card, there's a level up region that's kind of reserved for when you have the level up available. I can't actually click this arc light that's above the sledgehammer icon because right in that little spot is a dead zone. I'm trying to click the arc light, but it's because there is a level up. It's not actually able to level up, but that's just where it would be. So it's blocking my mouse clicks, but now I can click him just fine. Now, some of the bigger news in the patch is how the free units that came with the Chaos patch are no longer free. Some of them anyway. You can see the cost in the bottom right corner, and these units now have this extra cost associated with them to further kind of tone down the impact that these are going to have on your overall game. This is, I think, a small step in the right direction to help balance out these free units to go alongside the specialist cards. But you have something else. If that's a small step in the right direction, we have a giant leap, and that is rare units. You see here on the screen, we have a new unit, the Sabertooth. The Sabertooth is one of 3 new units with more to come that have been announced, but more to come that are going to come in the game, and they are all medium-sized units for now, and these are units that are only to be found in these unit drops. Once you have purchased them, you are able to build more, but they each kind of come with their own unique ability and their own way to stand out in the crowd. We have the Fire Badger, a 200 cost flame-throwing tank that comes in a squad of 3. Next up is the Sabertooth, also 200 cost. It's a double-barreled tank focused on offense, and it's a single unit squad. Also, it comes with a anti-missile turret. Finally, we have the Typhoon, a 300 cost squad that has 2 spider walkers that have more Daka than 20 Mustangs. Let's have a closer look. So what is the Fire Badger? First off, to me, it is absolutely just a lesser version of a Vulcan. We have a flame tank here that has the same fast attack interval idea. It has a bit of a splash range. It's very short range. And with it being in the squad of 3 and being half the cost, you might have some extra utility by being able to maybe plug some holes against chaff that maybe a Vulcan would have been overkill with. It does have different abilities for different technology than the Vulcan has. First one we might point out is the field maintenance. That might lead you to believe that this thing could be tanky. Unfortunately, no. I really feel like this is, even though it has that 5,700 health, it's not getting one shot by a level 1 marksman. It is up front with that short range, and that heal is just not enough. These things are dying very quickly every time I've played with them. It also has Ignite, and Ignite is going to help it fight anything that's not chaff. Not so different from a Vulcan here. Again, and it has an extra range buff. But our range, since it only starts at 60, getting it up to 100 is only really just beginning to be useful. I kind of feel like range is going to be mandatory on this thing to make it work. And then we have our unique ability. That ability, I'm going to highlight down here, is Napalm. Napalm attacks ignite the ground within 15 meters of the target. Ground fires last for 20 seconds, costs 350 damage per second. That's the same as all the fire text, but what you have here is fire that's going to appear directly on whatever target that it is shooting at, as opposed to the Stormcaller, Firecaller shooting missiles above and past the fast-moving targets, or the missile firebomb that the Vulcan has that, again, fast-moving targets can avoid. Crawlers are particularly susceptible to the Fire Badger, and I believe it to be a superior counter to crawlers than a Vulcan is. That said, it is weaker, it has less utility, it's in just about every way a lesser Vulcan in my opinion, but if you're not planning on building a whole build around it, maybe this is a more cost-effective solution to a crawler problem. Okay, next up we have the Sabertooth. The Sabertooth is a 200 cost unit, 1 unit in the squad. It actually wasn't always that way. It used to be 400 cost with 2 units in the squad. They decided to cut that in half. And so we end up with a purely offensive, tanky type unit. It at one point was kind of comparable to a fortress. No longer. It kind of has its own place now with purely offensive build. Maybe you could compare it to a carry fort. Instead, it now has range enhancement. It's got launcher overload for the 50% faster attack speed. It's got double shot for firing twice as much damage as well. Those stats there, it's got about 15,000 health at level 1, 5,000 damage. It does have a little bit of a splash to it. Not a quick mover, but it does move. And so what you end up with is something that can definitely go alongside your forces. Perhaps you were missing a little bit of extra punch. For 200, it's not too expensive. But it is something that isn't going to necessarily, in those stats alone, carry the day. Why might you get it though? In my opinion, I think the reason why that anyone would want this really is this fourth tech. It has Missile Interceptor. Now, this is Missile Interceptor that's pretty much the same as just a missile turret device, with the key difference being this thing moves around. And so now you can have a missile interceptor following the group. I think you're probably going to see this perhaps a lot on aggro builds, supporting those, because what you're going to end up with is something that can be taking the hits from, for example, stormcallers, even boats, being able to take those hits while also shooting down their attacks as well. There's probably a little bit of some opportunity here as well to be shooting down enemy missile attacks. Again, if you're playing aggro, you're all the time you're dealing with missiles hitting your units. Instead of spending 50 for the device, you can spend 250 for the tech to have with your units for the rest of the game, and also the current meta with having those boats. I like to think though that there's another area that perhaps is going to be pretty well unique to the Sabertooth, and that is on the flank. You see, this means that it can take out whatever missiles the defender is parking on the flank to try to have a cheap alternative to defending it, and with the range and damage, it can almost immediately snipe that tower. Now, I don't know if this is something you'll be able to just buy and get an easy tower kill, but it does mean that it is opening up another avenue to get in there that you might not otherwise have. And so I'm very excited to see how this works. Perhaps we'll be pairing it with other units, perhaps with a fortress, perhaps it will go with the fortress's shield, with the fortress's anti-air while it's shooting down missiles. I don't know, but I want to see what's going to happen with it. And there's your Sabertooth. Okay, and finally we have our third unit, the Typhoon. The Typhoon, I think, is very similar to the role of the Mustang, particularly because it does come with the anti-air, air specialization tech. It is a rapid-fire Gatling gun unit. It comes in a squadron of 2. It has a high cost compared to the other two of 300 instead of 200. And so you might not be able to afford quite as many of these, but that's okay because these things are fun. What you end up with is a tanky Mustang, a Mustang unit that can take out not only chaff, not only air, but can also take hits from the enemy. Part of the reason for that is because it has the armor enhancement, but in addition, it is now the third unit to be able to have the barrier tech. And so the barrier tech is pretty unique here. I am going to show it to you because what you end up with is, even though it is a smaller amount of shield hit points compared to both the hacker and the fortress, you get 2 of them. You get 2 of them. And so because there are 2 here, you're going to have some interesting interactions with units that are retargeting. They are definitely smaller. You're not going to cover nearly as many allied units with them. But because there are 2, I've seen where melters that are targeting one of these Typhoons, they target one, it breaks through the shields, but now it has to hit the other shield and it has to start the charge over again. Now, of course, it's a melter. It's going to kill this, but it does cause some interesting interactions. So you combine that with your armor enhancement, and what you end up with is a Mustang that can stand up to the attacks of a Vulcan. Very interesting stuff. So in addition to that, you have your area specialist, so it is taking on the Phoenix that tends to go with Vulcan. And so I find that this is perhaps going to be my new go-to against the Vulcan Phoenix. But what does it bring that is new? That is the homing missile. The homing missile says it launches 4 homing missiles every 8 seconds to attack distant enemies. Each missile causes 450 damage, increasing by 450 per level. It has a maximum range of 180 and a minimum range of 60. That minimum range is a bit of an unfortunate thing. It does mean that you're really not going to be using that to save this thing against the rhino attacks or crawlers or anything like that. But what it can do is help you to actually deal damage to an armored enemy, like a sledgehammer who has armor, or just deal bonus damage to that giant Vulcan that you're facing down. Either way, what I really find most interesting about the Typhoon overall, this is a very nice, well-rounded unit, but I love the fact that 3 of the 4 techs on here scale with level. These missiles scale every level, 450 more damage. The barrier, every level, another 12,000 damage absorbed. And as armor goes, every level is another 60 damage blocked as well. And so if you ever find that you are on a high level, a high round in your game, and it gives you as your rare unit deploy the unit card for a level 9 Typhoon, I think you got to go for it. I think you've got to grab it, because that level 9 Typhoon is going to be able to stand up to just about everything on the battlefield. Alright, well that about wraps up the information I have for you on the new Mechabellum 0.8 patch. It's going to be going live on Thursday, April the 4th in the morning, so about the time you wake up, it will already be out there ready for you to download and enjoy. What do you think, though? Are you excited about the new rare units like I am? Are you excited that there's going to be more coming down the line, or just the general direction of the game? Maybe the UI, maybe you love it, maybe you don't, I don't know. Let me know, though, in the comments, or we can talk about it on our Twitch channel, or you can find me on Discord as well. I'm PastorDruski. I hope you have a great day, and God bless.